Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live transfer talk show on Football Talk Podcast. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. One of my favorite shows that I like to do on an annual basis, and that is talking about transfers, but more importantly, trying to come up with a master plan for Liverpool's summer transfer window. So here we are today. The big question is, who should Liverpool sign? Liverpool are actually one of the busiest teams so far, I'd probably say, alongside Man City, where we've already signed three or four players if you include the young goalkeeper as well. But it doesn't look like the business stops there. So let's go through the squad. Let's see. I think should stay, should be sold, or should be loaned out. We can go through it together. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to get involved in the live chat with your comments. Now, got a couple comments here from Kieran before we start. Says hello, hello, hello. You had me waiting for 15 minutes. Apologies, I was actually online. There was some sort of issue with StreamYard, but yeah, we're here live and kicking. So let's crack on and start with the first thing that I like to do is just to remind ourselves about the homegrown rule because that is a very important thing that we need to consider, especially when you're trying to acquire new players this summer. So I'll just read through the notes I have on the screen. So a homegrown player means a player who, irrespective of nationality or age, has been registered with any club affiliated to the Football Association or the Football Association of Wales for a period, continuous or not, or three entire seasons or 36 months before his 21st birthday or the end of the season during when he turns 21. A squad, this is a key detail, a squad of maximum 25 players must be submitted. The criteria is that there can't be more than 17 non-homegrown players. The squad must contain a minimum of 8 homegrown players that are over 21 years old. Players under 21 are required to be registered. This could be a slight concern for Liverpool because I don't think we have as many homegrown players as we probably did last season. The key important detail is in the paragraph that's highlighted in green, and it says if clubs are unable to comply with these rules, they can still compete, but their squad will be reduced. For example, if they could only name 7 homegrown players, they would only be able to have a first team squad of 24 players instead of 25. So that's one key detail to remember, especially as we go through the show. Now, that's the homegrown quota. Let's have a look at the current squad. Now, I've listed them and I've separated them based on, if they're homegrown or non-homegrown or if they're under 21. So if you're under 21, you don't have to be registered. As you can see on the non-homegrown section, 17 players I've added. Verts and Kirkers. I know Kirkers isn't official yet, but that's pretty much a done deal. And so that's why I've added him there. So he ends up being the 17th player that's non-homegrown as it stands, of course. And then in the homegrown sector, we actually have 12 players there, but a lot of them I do expect to see leaving this summer. The likes of Reece Williams and Phillips, who were out on loan, they returned from their spells. I do expect them to be moved on at some point this summer. And then you have a number of young players in the under 21s, the likes of Nalo, Ramsey, Vashtic, McConnell, Leone, Doak, Gordon, and Gamoa, and Jalen Dands. So the 4 players highlighted in green are the players that are new signings. So Frimpong is pretty much the first official signing. And then you've got Pexi, who was also unveiled, and he will be going into the under 21s, I think, for probably the season. And then, if he's ready, he will be part of the first team forward at some stage. Verts, according to reliable journalists, that deal has been agreed, and it's only a matter of time that Liverpool make that official. So Verts is pretty much a Liverpool player, and I go with the same song sheet with Kirkis. He looks like he's set to join Liverpool very, very soon as well. So that's our current squad right now. A lot of players, if we're only able to register 25, we've got a lot of chopping and changing to do because you've got 17 non-homegrown plus 12 homegrown. So that's 29 players there. So at least 4 will leave, but I think, there will be more than forward that will be departing this summer. And these are the players that I have earmarked as players that will potentially be sold or potentially loaned out this summer. So the players that are highlighted in orange are players that I think will be sold, and the players that are highlighted in purple, I believe they will be loaned out. So let's start with Simicast. Now he's a player that I expect to depart, especially as we're on the verge of signing Kirkes very, very soon. So he will pretty much be surplus to requirements. Therefore, I think Simicast will be leaving the club this summer. Darwin Núñez, I expect him to leave um, this summer as well. Player that's not really delivered over the last few years, and even under Arne Slot, it looks like he wasn't, his type of striker. Unfortunately, whenever he was called upon, didn't really deliver. So I think this is probably the best time for the player and the club to part ways, especially as he's been there for 3 years. 3 years is, adequate time for you to have an impact in the team, and I don't think he has done a sufficient effort to do that. So for me, Darwin Núñez is pretty much a strong contender to lead the summer. Diaz is a tricky one. I would love to see Diaz stay for at least another season, but if the club aren't willing to offer him a new contract, then I can see him being sold, unfortunately, this summer. And there's a lot of interest coming from Saudi Arabia as well as interest from Barcelona. Whether Barcelona can, stump up the fee remains to be seen because we will probably want to get at least 60, 70 million, that kind of range. Whether Barcelona can afford him remains to be seen. But I do think he will part ways, especially if the club aren't showing any willingness to give him new terms or a new contract. And the player I've got highlighted in purple is Chiesa. I would love to see Chiesa stay. I think he's a really talented player and, wasn't really given enough opportunities. Some will argue to say like maybe, he was injured and, he was out of form for some parts of the season, but I still feel like there's a talented player there. And when he was fit, he wasn't really called upon as much as he could have been, in my opinion. So I would have liked to have given him one more season, but I think, the writing's on the wall for Chiesa. Arne Slot doesn't really favour the player. He didn't utilise him as much. So therefore, I expect Chiesa to possibly return to Serie A. He's actually been linked to a move today to La Liga with Real Betis showing interest. So that could be a possible destination for the Italian winger. Now over to the homegrown section. Yaros, I believe, has signed a new contract. I don't think it was official, but I think that has been the talks that he's either signed it very quietly or he's on the verge of signing a new contract. But there's strong rumors that we could be loaning him out this year, with Ajax, showing strong interest. As I'm sure you guys are aware, Ajax have just appointed a new manager in Heitinga, who of course was Arne Slot's assistant manager this season gone. So that's probably why Yaros is linked with a move to Ajax. I think that'd be a great move for the player. He'll be playing, for one of the top teams in the Netherlands. He'll be able to play in the Champions League, hopefully, or European football. I'm not actually sure where they finished in the league, but do expect him to be playing at a good level. So yeah, I do expect they finished second, so he will be in the Champions League. So that'll be a good club for him to develop, and with a long spell, he can come back and be ready to challenge for not really a place in the team. He'll probably be third choice again, but it could definitely increase his stock and it could push him to get a move elsewhere, or it could get a permanent move to Ajax, which of course would lead to us, getting a substantial fee for him as well. So I expect Yaros to be loaned out this summer. Kwanzaa, he's a player that could do with a loan move, to be fair, but I think because he's got a bit of valuation and there is a lot of interest in the player, quite recently, he's been linked with a move to Bayer Leverkusen, which Kieran has just mentioned in the comments as well. So that is a possibility. People were expecting that to be part of a swap deal involving Verts, but I don't think that's something that happens in this day and age because it delays the process a bit. And in terms of you submitting, the finances to the leagues, you're not showing much of a profit in that manner. So better to do it as separate deals. So that's why there is still ongoing discussions between the two clubs Kwanzaa could be heading to the Bundesliga in terms of the valuation. We've given them quite a bit of money for Florian Wirtz. So, it's not like they're short of money. They can, pay the valuation that, we would like clubs to meet. And I would say Liverpool would probably accept around 40, 50 million in that kind of range. So let's see. I'm sure we'll hear some more speculation in regards to Kwanzaa, Reece Williams. I'm not even sure where he is in terms of his loan spell. Last I heard, he was at Aberdeen. Um, no, so the last club he was at was Aberdeen was in 2024. So he went to Port Vale, and he was on loan at Morecambe. So yeah, the writing's on the wall for him. I don't expect him to have a future at the club. I think he signed a long-term contract, so he's probably got a couple of years still left. So should get something from him. I'm not expecting a lot if I'm being brutally honest, and that goes the same with Nathaniel Phillips. Um, he was at Celtic from what I remember. So for me, showed a good account of himself a few years ago, but he's not really at the highest caliber and not good enough to play for Liverpool week in, week out. So for me, the writing's on the wall for him as well. And I do expect him to part ways permanently this season. And that goes for Reece Williams as well. I don't expect him to go out on loan again. Um, so yeah, so he's just finished the loan spell at Derby County. So hopefully, um, yeah, he for his own sake, he can be sold and play at a club, on a permanent basis and not worry about coming back on loan. Another player that was on loan was Owen Beck. Had a good spell for Blackburn. I would say he'll be loaned out for one more season, because there is a player there. I think he's very highly regarded at the club. He's had a fantastic loan spell at Blackburn, but even at his previous club in Scotland, I think he was even listed as playing the team of the season as well. So he's definitely a player, that has a lot of quality, and I feel like, he does have potential. He's at an age right now where the next step, is going to be key for his career. 22 years of age, and I feel like a loan move would make the most logical sense because you've got Robertson that is on his last year of his contract. So I don't expect the club to give Robertson a new contract, but by the end of next season, if Robertson leaves the club on a free and then Liverpool need to find a replacement, if Owen Beck is, good enough to be in the squad, then we won't need to invest money in another left back. We would probably have a ready-made replacement in Owen Beck, and him and Kirkers could challenge for that left back spot. So that's just something to consider for the future. So I do expect him to go out on loan this season. Um, Elliot, unfortunately, I do think st- I wouldn't say it's time. I would still like to have seen him stay for another season. I still feel like he could provide a lot of quality and depth for us. I think he could have been a great backup for inverts, especially for playing in different formations, or he could even be a backup for Mohamed Salah because I don't think we'll have a direct backup for Salah next season. But looks like it might be something that's been communicated to Elliot that he will need to part ways in order to play first team football because the chances will be very slim at Liverpool, unfortunately for him. So it's a shame because he's a very talented player, very likable as well. But it looks like he could be leaving this summer. Tyler Morton as well. His situation is a little bit different because he's been injured for the last few months. Uh, but if he's fit and ready, I expect him to depart. If he doesn't, if he's not fully fit and there's no club showing interest in him, then he could remain at the club. Positive thing will be he's homegrown, so he helps us in that criteria. But in terms of the actual team, I don't think he's adequate quality for us. Last season, he was getting interest from Leverkusen, so I'm sure there'll be some suitors for him out there. Um, whether he gets that kind of move or that kind of fee, I think last year we were looking at 20, 25 million. So if we're able to get anything close to that range, it would be a fantastic bit of business. So I think he will be leaving this summer if he's fully fit and able to move on. And then you've got the likes of Ramsey. I think his Liverpool career never really started. To be honest with you, he's been suffering a lot of injuries over the last 2 3 years. So I feel like another loan move would be sensible, but at the same time, it doesn't look like he's you know in the thinking of the Liverpool hierarchy. I think his future could be elsewhere, so might even end up selling. To be honest with you. McConnell, I've been impressed whenever I've seen McConnell on the pitch. Very talented player, multifunctional as well, can play in different roles. Very good on the ball, has an eye for a pass. But I think a loan move would be the right step for him in his career. Maybe a loan move to the Championship where he's playing more physical football week in, week out. I feel like it will only enhance his development and help him adapt to the physical aspects of the game. So when he comes back to Liverpool, he's pretty much ready to, hit the ground running in the Premier League. Because right now he can play a bit part role, but you'd want it to be where, if he was called upon in the future, then he's pretty much ready made. So for me, um, it's probably a good time to loan him out. Ben Doak, I think he was generating a lot of interest in the January window. I think Palace were willing to pay around £30 million for him. So it looks like, he's definitely got, a high valuation right now where maybe Liverpool can take advantage of that and try and sell him on in order to generate funds. So I can see Ben Dock leaving. Gordon, unfortunately, he's been plagued with a lot of injuries over the years. So I expect him to be sold. I don't think it's a loan move anymore to another club. I think he will be sold. And Dan's unfortunately picked up an injury for Sunderland in his loan spell. I think it'd be wise to send him out on loan once again and try and help with his development. Play week in, week out. That's how he's going to get better. He'll become a more of an all-round finisher, playing at the Championship, playing at that level, and I think he'll come back fighting for a place in the first team. I do feel like he does have a future at the club, so yeah, so that's definitely on the cards for me. Just gonna go through some of the comments here. Mazzy, big up Mazzy says, "Do you rate Bradley Bacola, and would he be a good signing for us?" I rate Bacola very, very highly. Yeah, he's one of my favorite left wingers in world football right now. I don't know if it's a realistic deal to get concluded because I know there's rumors circling that he's not fully happy there in terms of contract negotiations. But you've got a player there that is on the verge of being one of the best wingers in world football. I think he's that good. Um, so if Liverpool were to sign, it cost us a huge amount, but you'd have secured that left wing position for years and years. So if Liverpool, get an inkling that he's available and he'll be interested in the move, I think Liverpool would be all over him. So yeah, definitely a player I rate very, very highly. Kieran mentioned that Fabricio said they were separate deals. Yep, I definitely agree with that one. Um, Abdul says, "Hi everyone, how are you? Like, comment, share, subscribe." Big up Abdul, thank you for your comment there. Um, what's going to happen to Yaros, Gomez, Konate, Simicast, Kwanzaa, Endo, Jones, Elliot Morton, Diaz, Nunes, Chiesa, Jota, Ramsey, Williams, Phillips, Vacic, and Dog. I've literally just spoken about all of those players there. So as you can see, the ones that are highlighted in orange, I believe those players will be sold, and the players highlighted in purple will be loaned out. Azrak, big up Azrak. He says Aussie with Verts signing guaranteed and Kirk is on the way. Who do FC sign next if we sell Nunes and maybe Chiesa? Which left winger and striker should we get? Azrak, stay tuned. I will be talking about those positions later in the show. So yeah, bear with me. We'll talk about that in more detail. Daz, big up Daz is and who's asked, will you be doing any FC25 streams, Aussie? I might be doing some later on in this sort of off-season period. So I'll say just stay tuned, try and get something going. And then once the new game comes out in terms of FC26, we'll have new episodes for that as well. So yeah, definitely be on the lookout for that. Um, Musa, big up Musa says, I know this is unrelated to Liverpool, but thoughts on Thomas Frank to Spurs? I think it's a good appointment from Spurs. It's a shame for Brentford because I feel like Brentford finished the season very, very strongly. And it looked like maybe this was a turning point where if had kept Thomas Frank, maybe they could have challenged for European football next season. I think that's how much of improvement he made it there. So fortunate for Brentford, he's leaving at a bad time because they're a team on the up, in my opinion. And in terms of Tottenham's point of view, I'm supposed to probably help them win a trophy that is unheard of when it comes to Tottenham Hotspurs. And he's still got the sack, which is a bit crazy that's happened. But I think it's a very good appointment from Tottenham. You've got someone who is very, very articulate in terms of how he communicates. He's very good in terms of tactically, in terms of the way he likes his team to play. He does, favor playing attacking football, but he's not like Ange. He's not, all guns blazing type of football. He's very measured. He's got great sort of tactical nous as well. And I feel like playing, or should I say, managing a group of players that are probably playing at a different level to the players at Brentford, respectively. It's going to be a big challenge for Thomas Frank. So I think it's a very smart appointment. They could have gone for a manager from a different league, but I feel like they needed someone that's Premier League proven and someone that can definitely, grow with the team and will definitely have a point to prove in terms of them being regarded as someone of a high level coach. And I think Thomas Frank, doesn't get the plaudits that he probably should. I think he's a very, very good manager. So for me, great appointment for Spurs. Side appointment in terms of, well, not appointment, but side for Brentford. It'd be interesting to see who they appoint as their next manager because it's not a market where there's a lot of good managers available. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens there. Uh, Abdul's asking what's going to happen to Mbaya, Nahalo, McConnell, Scanlon, Kumas, Dans, Beck, Chambers, Norris, Gordon, Rio, and Yoni. So I've mentioned a few of those players already in the screen, as you can see. And Bayer, I think, will remain at the club in terms of playing under 21s. Nalo, I think he'll remain here as well. Scalon could go out on loan. I think a loan move would make sense for him. Kumas could go out on loan, could even be sold, to be fair. I haven't listed him in the under 21s. I think he'll return and play at the club. Daz on loan, Beck on loan again. Chambers, I think will probably be sold. Norris has Norris not been sold? I don't think he's a Liverpool player anymore. Gordon, I think he'll be sold. Rio will definitely be part of the under 21s. He's literally just been promoted 2 months ago, but he will be involved in, I would say, the cup games next season. I don't want it to be too much pressure on the young kid because he's a player with unbelievable talent. So we've got to nurture him correctly and ease him into the first team for us. So for me, there's no urgency to get him there right now. And Yoni, he'll be in a similar form where he will be playing in the cup games next season. When are we going to announce Kirkes and Verts? So if I was to make a prediction, we could expect a Florian Friday tomorrow, so you could get an announcement for that. And Kirkes either end of this week or early next week, I think. I think once the Verts deal is announced, then we'll hear the Kirkes one very, very shortly. That's my prediction there. Are we going to sign centre back CDM and number 9? I don't know if we will. I would love to for us to sign players in those positions, which we'll talk about later on in the show. Kieran says, I like how your streams are different every time based on topics rather than just general chat every stream. Big up yourself, Kieran. Thank you for your kind words there. Dad says, what are your thoughts on the two playing tonight for under 21s? Who's playing tonight? Please remind me. Because I'll be honest with you, I've not really been keeping too much over tabs in regards to international football. I forgot England were playing the other day. So please remind me who's playing today for under 21s. Uh, Abdul says, what do you think of Bacola, Sesko, Isak, Gyökeres, Ekitike, Edison, Inacio, Diamonde, Hato, Hincapi, Wharton, Embremo, Wissa, and Tonali? Um, Bacola, rate him very, very highly. If I was given a choice of signing any left wing in world football, he would be my personal choice to sign. I just don't think he's available, despite what we're hearing about him not agreeing a new contract. I think that'll happen in due course. I don't see him leaving PSG. I think PSG will do everything they can to keep him hold of him. for years to come. So no, I don't see Barcola being a realistic option. If he is, I really hope Liverpool go all guns blazing for him, like we did with Vert. Sesko, I don't rate him. If I'm being brutally honest, I think he's very raw. Um, Reminds me of Nunes in terms of how he plays. He's not a very clinical finisher, in my opinion. So not a player that I rate that highly, to be fair. Isak, you already know my feelings on Isak. He's the dream signing. Gyökeres, clinical striker, but from a Liverpool's point of view, I would just have slight reservations in terms of him being able to cut it in the Premier League. That would be my concern for Gyökeres. Ekitike, I like him. Very talented player. Still a bit raw, in my opinion, in terms of being a killer in front of goal, but very, very talented. Ederson, I like him. Good all-round midfielder. Inacio, I haven't seen him much, in the last season or so. I'd say he's a decent player, but I don't think he's someone that's regarded as a Liverpool target anymore. Diomande, really like him. He's a very interesting player. Hatter, rate Hatter very highly. A player that can play left back or centre back, but has great technical ability. Really, really good on the ball. Great pace about him. So player, definitely to keep an eye out for because there's a lot of clubs that are interested in, not just Liverpool, a lot of clubs in the Premier League that want to sign him this summer. So he could be on the move from Ajax. Hincapie, a really good defender. He showed his versatility a couple of seasons ago, playing left back, playing left wing back as well at times. So very, very good. Whenever I've seen him at centre back, he's looked very, very solid. Very strong in the air, very quick, very good with his tackling. Um, Good sign. He would be a good signing for Liverpool. Um, I probably would have mentioned him as a player to sign this summer, but I think we'll just take it a mick. If I'm, saying that we should buy a third Leverkusen player, I think they'd get fed up of the sight of Liverpool sporting director Richard Hughes or Michael Edwards. So yeah, maybe next season we can make that happen. Wharton, rate him very, very high. Very good player. And Vermo, very good player again. Uh, I'm a little bit disappointed that he's going to United. I don't think that's the right move for him. I think he can do better. I think he's a very, very good player. Wissa, talented player, and Tonali, really, really good player. So yeah, that's my thoughts on those players there. I was asked, do you think Verts and Frimpong can handle that physicality of the Premier League football? I think they will. Frimpong's already played, he's grown up in England, so he's played at youth level or reserve level for Man City. He's gone over to Celtic, he's gone to Bayer Leverkusen, and I feel like he's done a great job in every league that he's been at. So don't really have any issues with Frimpong settling to the Premier League. In terms of Verts, I think he'll do. I think he'll do really well. I think he's one of those very clever players that he doesn't need to use his you know his body to be physical. In challenges, he's just very smart, very elegant on the ball. He finds those little spaces, and for me, yeah, he's a game changer. He's a big, big signing for us. So I'm very, very excited to see Verts in the Liverpool shirt. Raji Painting, big up. So Verts is a very special player, but are we paying too much at 126 million? How excited are you to see him play for Liverpool FC? I'm very, very excited to see the prospect of Verts playing for Liverpool. Have we paid too much? I don't think we have. I know 126 million is a huge amount of money. It's not common for Liverpool, most teams to kind of spend that money, but the opportunity was there for Liverpool to pursue the player, and he was very much interested in our project. So for me, if a player shows that kind of hunger and that desire to join a club, it's only in a good step in the direction for us to acquire his services and give him the platform to play to the fullest of his abilities because I feel like he is someone that can definitely win a Ballon d'Or one day. He's that kind of caliber. He's just not a good player. I think he's world class. I think he's world class right now. But at the same time, I think there's levels for him to really, notch it up and be undisputed if you want to talk in that kind of manner. So for me, we've signed a top player. Man City fans will tell you, they got the better player in Turkey. Look, you guys know I rate Turkey, but Verts yeah, he's a better player than him, all day long. And if I had the choice between the two, I would have gone for Verts. And I think someone did present that question to me a few weeks ago as well. So yeah, I stand by that. Verts is an elite player, and I'm very, very excited to see him playing for Liverpool. Harvey and Konsa, I'm gonna have a check after the show. Daz, I have not really kept an eye on the England national team or under 21, so I'll have a check to see how they're doing. Um, Dad, would you ever do a collab with a guy called Premier League Dad? I'm not familiar with Premier League Dad, to be fair. I wouldn't dismiss any collabs, so no, I'll have a look to see what sort of content he does. But yeah, I wouldn't rule out a collab with anyone. Um, Abdullah, is Verts worth the money? I think he is. Only time will tell. But we've got him on a 5-year contract, and I feel like hopefully he gets extended and he's here for you know more than the 5 years, because I feel like he's a very, very special player, very special player. So I'm excited to see what he does in Liverpool shirt, and I think once we see the talent that he has, and the games that he dominates, and shows his tricks and skills and shooting ability, fans will tell you straight he is worth the money. So for me, yeah, I definitely think he's worth the money. Do you think we still need a top DM, or can Granbrook carry on playing there at a high level? I would like us to get another DM. It doesn't need to be a player that will overtake Gravenberch or anything to that nature. It's more so a player to rotate with, and to also play alongside Gravenberch if required. So I think another addition would make a lot of sense. Kieran says Romano did Vert's tweet 12 minutes ago saying 100% agreed. That's music to my ears there, Kieran. So yeah, good to hear that. Daz asks, what number shirt will Verts have? It will depend on the outgoings at the club. If Diaz was to leave in the next few weeks, it could be number 7. But if numbers aren't available, then he could probably pick 27 is a number I think he wore in his younger days. I've seen him wear 17 as well. So yeah, it'll be one of those numbers. It won't be number 10. He's mentioned it in one of his Instagram stories that he's not going to take another person's shirt in that way. So I think he'll get one of those numbers, to be fair. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So these are the players that I'm saying will be sold or loaned out. So the big question is, how much money can we generate? Just got a comment before I go. He says, "Big up, I'm your 500 subscriber. Congrats, bro. You'll never walk alone." Well, big up yourself. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you for being a 500 subscriber. And thank you to everyone, for showing your support. Really, really appreciate it. 500 is a big sort of milestone for YouTube content creators. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you for your support there. And that is saying, big up, Jack. Okay, let's go towards the next slide and see how much money we can generate. Don't quote me on these fees. This is just sort of an estimation for today's show, I guess. So I've got Kelleher up there because obviously he's sold, but that's still money in the bank. So that's 12.5 million. I know the deal ends up going to around 18 million pounds, but you know that involves appearances and add-ons and all that sort of stuff. So right now, the flat rate is 12.5 million. And I know, in terms of how deals are done, you don't give out the whole sum at once, but we'll just go based on, what we hear, through the media, where, they give us the total price. So that's the metric in terms of how I'm going to do today's show. Alexander Arnold, of course, he left on a free transfer, but due to Real Madrid wanting him a little bit earlier in order to participate in the Club World Cup. They had to dig deep and pull out 10 million for us in order to acquire his services earlier than planned. So we've got 10 million for Trent. Some fans changed their mind a little bit when they heard that we got 10 million. They're like, oh, do you know what? At least we got something from him. My issue was never really about the money, because I feel like, with professional football players, as silly as it sounds, they are selfish. They don't care about, if I'm going to leave, this club can get 100 million for me. They don't care about that sort of stuff. All they care about is, are they getting regular football? I Am I going to get a good contract here? If not, who else can offer me a better contract? They don't really care about the transfer element, in my opinion. So, um, I was surprised that a few fans, changed their opinion about Trent because we got 10 million for him. That wasn't because of him. That was, because Real Madrid were desperate. They don't have a right back in their squad, so they had to do that in order to get him earlier than planned. They're involved in the Club World Cup, which starts this Sunday, so they had to do that very, very soon. I'm sure everyone saw the revealing of Trent Alexander-Arnold as a Real Madrid player today. Um, Speaking very fluent Spanish, you know, you've had players like Mbappe come through and not speak a word of Spanish, but this guy was speaking like he was a native. So, you can't tell me that was something that he's picked up on for the last 2 3 years. He's probably been learning Spanish for a couple of years at least now. So, yeah, if you've been on my Instagram too, I called him a rat, for the way he's behaved, and that was like, the tipping of the ice there in terms of him speaking fluently like that. And I think he had another in he had a that was the sort of the Spanish element. Then he had an interview in Spain, and he said in a in English, sorry, and he basically said that he's been waiting a long time for this move to happen. And then he tried to correct himself by saying, "Oh, when I said long time, I actually meant 2 weeks." So yeah, he can jog on. But so let's not speak about him because it's just going to bore my blood even further. Simicast, I think we'll probably get about 10 million for him. I don't expect us to get too much from him. Kwanzaa, I think 40 million is a realistic ball mark to get for Kwanzaa. A lot of interest in the Premier League as well as the Bundesliga, so maybe we can um, get a good amount for the young centre back. Reece Williams, I wrote 2 million. I feel like that's a bit high now, but I'll leave it as it is. Nat Phillips, 3 million. Maybe, Celtic, have shown interest in the player in the last year or so. Of course, they had him for a short period of time as well. So maybe a club of that magnitude may offer us a deal like that. 3 million, it's not too crazy in this day and age. Ramsey, we're lucky to get a million for him, but we'll just round it up to 1 million. Um, Morton, I've written 20 on the basis that there was a lot of interest last year, especially from Leverkusen as well, who wanted to sign him for about 25 million, and we said no because he had just returned on loan from Hull, and we wanted to give him a opportunity for the first team at Liverpool. But it's quite adequate, clear that he's not, you know, quite at the level that we need at this stage. Um, of our sort of dominance in the league and, under Arne Slot. So it looks like it would be best for him to move on and play first team football elsewhere. And that includes Harvey Elliott of 40 million. I feel like we might be able to get a bit more for Elliott. It might sound a bit greedy. Maybe we can get 50 because 40 million is not that high. There's a lot of players that have been sold. Joe Bellingham just went to Dortmund for 30 million and he's been playing championship football for the last couple of years. So maybe 40, 50 is not too wild. So definitely feel like we can get at least 40 million for Harvey Elliott. Gordon, a couple million from a championship team could be a possibility. I've gone for 30 million for Doug. That seems quite high. I know some of you will say that, but I think it's possible because Palace were showing strong interest. We rejected a bid, I think, for about 25 million in January. So, his form for Middlesbrough was, scintillating for the first half of the season. Second half, he picked up a few injuries. That, definitely, of course, it lacked, didn't involve him as much, and then he ended up playing a bit more of a bit part role towards the end. So the talents there, I think there's gonna be a lot of interest in Ben Doak um, this summer, and I think 30 million is attainable. To be fair, and then I've gone for 70 million for Diaz, but probably thinking, a Saudi team will bid that kind of money, and I'm going for another 70 for Nunes as well. Now, the big question is how much money would that, generate if I add all of those fees up together? And the fee is actually 310.5 million. So that's a big, big amount. And I feel like that can be invested into a squad. So yeah, let's see. Let's see what we can do with that money. So let me just go through the comments before we go on to The next slide. You never walk alone 66. He said, I'm also a Liverpool content creator too, bro, who does LFC related streams. But big up yourself. If you want, post your link on the live chat, and I'll subscribe to your channel after the show. So yeah, make sure to do that. Um, goodness, that boy has been learning Spanish for time. He has, you know, I speak Urdu because my family from Pakistan. He speaks more fluent than I do, and I've been speaking all my life of that language. So yeah, he was. Yeah, I felt like the people in the crowd, like Florentino Perez, was very, very impressed in terms of how he was talking. So yeah, I felt like that really annoyed me watching that clip. To be honest with you, I'm not gonna lie. Um, what Classic says, if you would like to collab with me sometime, I can shoot you a DM, bro. Yeah, yeah, feel free to shoot me a DM. We'll chat offline, and yeah, we'll try and do a collab as well. Yeah, feel free to do that. Um, Kira says, I never thought I would hear a Scouser speaking fluent Spanish. You know what? You can even hear the Scouse in his accent there. He was very, very fluent. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Um, Irritating. I know some fans have said online like, "Oh, why are you guys still banging on about Trent? Like, just like leave it." But you can't leave it when the player's been presented to the world as a Real Madrid player. This is probably the last bit that we're going to talk about him. And after that, it'll probably be closed doors. But it just today for me just validated a lot of our opinions about Trent, where some fans are like, oh look, he's giving us his all these years, he deserves appreciation, all that stuff. But the thing is, yes, he does deserve appreciation to an extent, but not fully. If I'm being honest with you, because the way he handled that situation, the way he's treated the club for the last 2, 3 years, it's diabolical. Like the rumor was that the Real Madrid had contacted him about 2, 3 years ago, to say, look, we're interested in signing you, but in order for this deal to happen, you have to run out the contract, and then we'll get you on a free transfer, and that's how we'll sign you. There was no thinking about Liverpool there. There was a selfishness in that approach, because he only thought about himself. And let's be honest, the last 2, 3 years, he's had a very up down period in his career. When he was, pretty much in the team, from 18, 19 years old, he was literally in full flow. Last 2, 3 years, that's why he's always been a player of debate, because fans will tell you that he can't defend, and us Liverpool fans will blindly support him as well, and justify certain arguments at certain times. But now I've got no energy for the guy, so he can go on and do what he wants. To be fair, uh, but yeah, it's very, very annoying. But it is what it is. It's closed chapter now. We've got Frimpong through the door, so I'm looking forward to seeing him in a Liverpool shirt. You never walk class 66 says, I agree, he's a rat. I'll be getting a channel rebrand on Monday. Don't worry, bro. Be yourself. I look forward to seeing that. Um, Kieran said, what was the last time that got you this excited like Verts has? Hey, that's a great question. I would have to say the Thiago Alcantara deal. That deal got me really, really excited. Of course, when you look back at it, it wasn't a deal that, you know, in terms of his involvement, he didn't have the fullest of impact. Whenever he played, he was quality, but unfortunately, it was not in large chunks. It was basically here and there. So for me, I was very excited because he had a fantastic season for Bayern Munich. But on a personal note, he has been one of my favorite midfielders for a long, long time. So he was always a dream signing in my head, which I thought would never realistic unless you're playing your PlayStation 5. But for me, yeah, he was definitely a player that when we signed, I was very, very excited. So yeah, definitely one that got me overjoyed. And with Verts, I feel the same thing. I really do. What Clan 60 said, it doesn't let me post the link on the chat, bro. I got to be a mod to do that. Oh, okay. Just leave the name of your channel. Because I know with YouTube channels you can do at and then just the name. So even if you just write the name of your channel, I'll have a look and I'll try and find you on YouTube later on today. It says done. I just followed you on Twitter, bro. Big up yourself. I'll reach out to you very, very shortly. So yeah, so let's move on to the next slide. That's the total fund, the total amount there, 310 million point five. Now, The big question is the deals involving Verts, Frimpong, and Kirkes. Is that going to be taken out of this amount? Well, shout out to Mo Chatler, who is someone that is, in the financial industry, has great expertise in this area, and mentions a lot of stuff surrounding Liverpool when it comes to transfers and the finances involved. And for me, it's good to get that kind of perspective from a different person. So history said that the Frimpong, Kirkland, and Vert deals are not dependent on sales. There's plenty of headroom coming off a 700 million season and heading into a 2005-2026 financial year that should generate in the region of 750 million to finance these moves. Further sales will enable more business. So, take that how you will. I think that's, definitely positive news for us fans because it shows that maybe we're not done here. I might be sounding like a dreamer of sounding, a bit too excited right now, but that means that, if we can sell all those players that I mentioned in the previous slide, that 310 million point five can be used on other players. So let's go on that notion that, that money is available to acquire more players on top of what we've already signed, which is Kirkes, Frimpong, and Florian Wirtz. So, let's see what we can. So the big question is, who should Liverpool sign if those money, if that money was available for us to acquire new players into the squad? I've gone for four positions that need to be addressed. So for me, a centre back needs to be addressed. A centre midfielder definitely needs to be addressed for me. A left winger if Luis Diaz ends up leaving this summer, and a striker to replace Darwin Nunes in the team. So those are the four positions that I would like the club to strengthen in this summer window. Now, you guys will remember at the top of the show I mentioned about the homegrown rule. So right now, forget the number six I have on homegrown. Right now we have five homegrown players. So Davis is Harvey Davis. That's the goalkeeper. Now I've read somewhere that um he's actually signed a new contract and will be staying at the club. It's not official and it's not come from Liverpool, it's come from a different source. But the reason behind it is because he's 22 now. So he will be regarded as a homegrown player if he stays at the club for another season. So I think that Liverpool have that in the back of their mind that we don't have a lot of homegrown players, clearly based on this list there. So we will need to keep hold of him for at least another year. We do have Yaros, but Yaros looks like could be, sent out on loan. He's actually homegrown as well. So maybe that would have been a player that would have taken that place. So we needed one goalkeeper to be homegrown. And that's why I think Davis will end up being the goalkeeper that is regarded as homegrown. Joe Gomez, of course, homegrown. Frimpong, he came through the ranks of Man City, so that's why he's regarded as homegrown. You've got Connor Bradley, you've got Jones, and then I mentioned four players that need to be signed. So I would say that maybe we sign as a defensive midfielder from the Premier League, or a player that fits the homegrown quota. It doesn't need to be from the Premier League, or it doesn't even need to be English. And then we can definitely sign a centre back, a left winger, and a striker. And as I mentioned earlier on, so we've got five homegrown players. Let's say six if we do get defensive mid. So what you do, you would basically minus six from 25. So you end up having 19. Is that correct? No, that's not correct. So we would have 16 players. If we signed all of the players, we'd have 16 players that are non-homegrown. The max is 17. So even if that DM was not homegrown, we could actually have a CDM that is non-homegrown. It still maxes out the non-homegrown quota, but I have a play in mind, so that's why I'll present to you guys very shortly. And therefore, we've got 16 non-homegrown plus 6, so it ends up being 22. So we can actually have 23 players registered. So if you wanted to add another player to the mix, it can be someone that's non-homegrown, and it still is, legit for us to do. So it's nothing too crazy because I remember seeing Wolves' squad last summer, and I was thinking, how on earth do they get homegrown players? How do they do it? Because most of their players are from the Portuguese league or they're Brazilian, so they've got half of the Brazilian national team in that team, so in that squad. So, how do they do it? And I realized this is the kind of method they use where they register a smaller squad and whatever homegrown players they have, they just try to balance it out with the non-homegrown players. So it's possible. We don't have a lot, but we can, make it work in that regards. So let's move on, and I'm going to present the players that I would like Liverpool to target this summer. The first player is Osman Diomande. Now, he's a player that has been linked to the club, so he's not a player that I just picked out of the blue. He's a very, very strong candidate for me. The best way to describe him, in terms of ability or stylistically, he's like Konate. That's the best way I can describe him. The good thing with Diomande is that he's predominantly played in a back three, can play in a back four. He has done that, but at Sporting they tend to play with back three. So, he's a player that's multifunctional. I've actually seen him play as a DM as well. So he's a player that's very good on the ball, very strong, very aggressive, dominant in the air. But one thing that he's really good at is covering the ground on the flanks. So, if you've got Frimpong bombing down that right hand side, he will provide fantastic cover. On one-on-one duels, he's very good. He's got great recovery speed. So for me, he would be a very strong and solid signing. He's coming to the club as third choice centre back. So he'll be challenging Van Dijk or Konate or providing more adequate cover more than anything else. I think he'd be a fantastic signing. I did have Hato in mind as well, but Hato for me would be regarded as a backup to Van Dijk because of him being, left-footed. I don't think, that's the profile I want us to sign right now. And also with the uncertainty of Konate, it might make sense for us to get his replacement in terms of the long term. Um, I really hope he signs a new contract, but right now we're not hearing much. So even if Dumonde comes and Konate stays, they can still play together as well. So for me, uh, I think he would be a very strong sign. I don't think he'd cost too much. I'd say 30 to 40 million, that kind of range. I've seen him being linked with Crystal Palace today as well, out of all teams. So, hopefully, if Liverpool are interested in signing Diomande, but that we are one of the clubs that are, in the running to try and get his signature because I think he could be a very, very astute signing for us. Some fans might have some reservations about signing Diomande due to, his involvement in Africa. He's an Ivory Coast international, but I've heard that the competition will be moved over at a different time of the year. Um, I think from years to come. So that shouldn't really play too much of a part in terms of acquiring players from Africa. But Diomande for me would be a smart sign. It wouldn't cost too much. I think he'd be a good addition to the squad. The next player, Adam Wharton. Now, this is the guy that I think we should be doing our utmost to try and sign this summer. Is it realistic? Depends on how much you put on the table. Because Palace, I'm not entirely sure about this situation. I know they were having issues registering themselves for the Europa League due to one of the owners having a share at Lyon. So I don't know if that's been resolved yet. But as it stands, they should be participating in the Europa League. So I would like us to test the waters and try and get Wharton to Anfield. But if he stays at Palace, I don't think it's a crazy decision on his part because he's quite young. He's 21, 22 years of age. He'll be playing European football for the first time in his career at club level. If he stays at Palace, of course, if he joins Liverpool, he's playing, elite level football. He's playing Champions League. So it's going to take a big chunk of money to prize him away. I think around £60 million should be enough to acquire services. Um, he's a player that for me will be quite important to the squad because he can play as a number six, as a single pivot, but can also play in a double pivot and can also even play as a number eight. And he will add a different dimension to our team because he's a left-footed centre midfielder. So adding him to the left hand side gives us balance. Um, and he's a good passer of the ball, very aggressive, strong in the tackle. You know, he definitely makes his presence felt in that middle of the park. So for me, he'd be a great signing for us. There was another name that I could have added as well, and that was Schumanni, which doesn't seem like a realistic target. But the recent rumor is that he's actually available for around £59 million, and Liverpool are regarded as one of the teams that are interested. So it remains to be seen, if that is a player that we can try and sign. But I'll be pleased with Adam Walton. Of course, he will be added as a homegrown player, so it helps us in the long term in regards to meeting that quota. So I think he would be a smart signing for Liverpool. Gone for Rodrigo for the left wing position. And maybe we should have gone for Barcola because we've been speaking about Barcola today, and he's actually one of my favorite players. Um, but Rodrigo would be a good sign, and the reason I've gone for Rodrigo more so than Barcola is because even though Barcola's having issues with his contract, I think he'll sign. I think he'll sign a new contract. He's such an elite talent, and with the season that they've just had, winning the Champions League, it's a scary thought into how they're going to present themselves for years to come because they've got a young team that's hungry and ready for success. So I don't think they'd want to sell him anytime soon. I know they've got Kvaratskhelia who can play on that left hand side, but Barcola can play on the left, can play on the right very easily. So I don't see him leaving anytime soon. And the reason why I've added Rodrigo is because it's quite clear that he wants to leave Real Madrid. So this would be, a interesting time to try and, acquire his services. We have been interested in the past. We were close to getting him on a deal, I think when he was at Santos, but he was quite young at the time. And, Michael Edwards was the guy, not getting that deal done. So he's definitely got interest in the player. So if he is available, you know, Florentino Perez says that Liverpool and Real Madrid are in good terms, then prove it. Sell us one of your players. You took ours, in an unethical way. Let's see how you guys can back out by you know concluding a deal with us with regards to one of your players. So if that's true, then you got to show it with actions rather than words. So for me, Rodrigo would be a good addition to the squad. But if it was my choice, I'd go for Barcola. That'd be my guy. But I think in terms of players being available, I think we could have a chance to try and get Rodrigo ahead of Barcola. This is the dream signing. This shouldn't be any surprise here. Alexander Isak. I'm hoping that us signing Florian Wirtz, entices Isak to come and join the ship and come on board because for us, if we had Isak in our team, oh, we are cooking. Honestly, teams will be fearing us left, right, and center. If we had Isak and Wirtz in the same team, come on, Isak's going to be scoring braces and hat tricks, on a regular basis. He's going to be that kind of level. So for me, he's the best striker out there, in my opinion, in terms of what he brings to the table. Um, Clinical finisher, good variation of it. He doesn't just score tap-ins, like he can score any type of goal. Good link-up player as well. Can attack that channel on the counter attack as well. So for me, the dream signing isn't realistic. I don't know, but we're having fun today. So for argument's sake, let's say that he is attainable and we're going to try and acquire his services. Before I move on to the next slide, I'm just going to read some of the comments. Um, let's see. So, Walk on 66 says, "Oh, so that's your ID. I'll make a note of that. Thank you for providing that." Um, Walk on 66 says, Fabrizio just made a new post on Twitter about Verts and said it's 100% deal done. But he said, "Here we go soon." Didn't he say it? It was already here we go the other day. Yeah, he might have jumped the gun on that one, but hey, look, he got us all excited. So I think it's just a matter of time that we, get that deal over the line and have it officially announced. So yeah, it's happening. It's happening. Let's just leave it at that. And he said, "Spot on, mate. We need quality in those positions." Big up yourself for your comment there. With the Liao links with us recently, would you be happy if we sign him as the Diaz replacement? I personally would be happy with Rafael Leao. I rate him very highly. I know fans will say that he can be inconsistent, but then again, which winger isn't inconsistent at times? So for me, if he's you know s- been sold in terms of what the coach wants and how the coach envisions him to play, and he's really bought into that philosophy, and he gives his all. I feel like Leao could be a killer in our team. Playing on the left wing, but can also play up top if we were to have a strike force of two strikers. So for me, he would be a great signing, and I think he is attainable. He wouldn't cost too much. 50, 60 million pounds is the reported fee. So I would definitely sign Leao. I really like him. But yeah, let's see what happens with him. Chris, what's your thoughts on Waterman? He would be homegrown. Well, you just read my mind there. That's the player I've just presented, Securin. So yeah, he's definitely a player I feel like we should be trying to go for a number of reasons. And the homegrown one is certainly a bonus. Double D, big up Double D says, uh, this joke is when we were meant to get him before he went Palace, but they thought he was too similar to Basic. Is that the case? Wow, he's nothing like Basic. That's a poor judgment there from whoever said that out loud because they're not similar. Um, Wharton is by far the better player. Um, I think Matic will be involved in the squad next season, but I don't see him being, heavily involved. I think he'll be like fifth or sixth choice. That's the kind of level he'll be at. I don't see him having too much um of a impact role in the team. He'll be more utilized in cup games, in my opinion. Um, but he's had a good long spell at Las Palmas, so maybe they'll be interested in a La Liga team. And if they want to, spend decent money on him, then we might even accept a bid. 'Cause for me, I'm not completely sold on Bashir. I think when he broke into the team, he stood out from the crowd because we had the players that were losing their legs. They were like beyond past it. So he stood out from a bad bunch basically. So um yeah, he's a decent player. I don't think he's at the level that I expect for Liverpool Football Club. I just don't think he's at that level. Some fans would definitely disagree with that, but that's just my opinion. Um and Kieran says he didn't say Vert's hair we go soon in the recent tweet. Oh, okay, fair enough. I haven't checked my Twitter yet, so I'll be checking afterwards. He says it was on his Instagram. Man, oh, okay, he was on his Instagram. That's fair. Um, Kieran says, I've always been skeptical about Liao. When he's firing, he's unstoppable, but too often he looks lost in games and struggles with form. He's had a pretty average season for AC Milan as well. That is, a fair assessment, I guess, in terms of Rafael Liao. I think he's one of those players that, he would definitely split opinions because when he's on song, he looks like a world beater. He really does. He's that kind of level. Um, but to try and back him up a little bit, I think he's been at the same club for far too long. He should have moved from AC Milan a long time ago because he's been there for a number of years. It's a club that's pretty much stagnated. They haven't really progressed as a collective. So he should have moved on, and that's probably why his development or his progression in his career has hampered a little bit because he's at one place right now. So this summer would make sense for him to move clubs. In terms of his stats for last season, he got 25 GA in 50 games, 12 goals and 13 assists. So it's not too bad in my opinion. Um, I feel like in a better team he can really excel. So it will just depend on Arne Slot. Does he have belief in the player? Because if he does, then I think he can definitely shoehorn him into the winger that he envisions. And that is Liao being a world beater because I think he can be that type of player. But he just needs it's more of a mental thing, I think, for Liao to maybe give him that confidence or that belief that he is the guy, like he is number one. So if you give him that kind of confidence, then you'll see him, go through brick walls for Arsenal. That's what you want from your players. So who knows? I feel like he will be a player that will be linked with us. Whether he joins remains to be seen. There's a lot of clubs that are interested. Bayern Munich want him as well, so it'll be interesting to see where he ends up this summer. Um, Kieran said would be he would be an exciting sign nonetheless. Yeah, I agree with that one. He said I feel like if Liao moved to PSG instead of Kvara, he would be a different player. yeah, if Kavara had come to Liverpool, that would have been icing on the cake as well. I really thought we were gonna get him. When I feel it was it Ornstein that tweeted it. Yeah, it was Ornstein. And I got so excited. I did an impromptu show straight afterwards, and I was just highlighting how effective he would be. And a few days later, he was holding a PSG shirt. So yeah, a bit of a pie on my face there. But yeah, he would do well in a PSG team as well because he's not just one dimensional. He can, come inside and pause. That sounded a bit off there. He can, cut inside and play in a bit more of a central role as well. Very impactful in his dribbling. Um, very direct, and he can shoot from distance as well. So for me, yeah, he would do well in a PSG, but I think he'll do well in a Liverpool team as well. I think he could be impactful. And the way I see us setting up, I feel like we're going to play a 4-4-2 diamond. That's the formation that I'm envisioning right now. And he can play in those striker roles alongside a Salah or whoever's available. I feel like he could do, a great job for us. But let's see. That's definitely a player I would earmark. That's why, I've only presented one option, that was Rodrigo, because, it's strong rumors suggesting that he wants to leave, so he's technically available. I would have gone for either Barcola or Rafael Leao. If it was my choice to get a player that I like, full stop, I probably would have gone for Barcola. He's someone that really excites me. Um, so maybe we could get the best out of him. Yeah, possibly. James says, I never felt confident getting Cavara because I think PSG was always in the driver's seat. They were, I think we showed interest very late on, which is annoying from our part because we're normally very, optimistic when it comes to those type of signings, and we were fast asleep. It looks like maybe Richard Hughes was in Italy on holiday at the time. Who knows? But couldn't get the deal done, fortunately. Would have saved us a lot of grief because we would have had a great player in the squad. Then all we had to do was probably just focus on signing a striker, which I'm hoping and dreaming it will be Isak. So yeah, let's see what happens. I'm sure Liverpool can, still rectify. There are brilliant left wingers out there in world football. Striker market, different conversation. I don't think there's too many out there, but we can definitely, try our best to test the waters and get him on board. Now, how much would these players cost, and are they realistic? So I think Diomande was cost around 40 million. I don't think it costs more, maybe even less. I think I've just kind of rounded up because we're never too sure. If I think when normally a big club tries to acquire a Portuguese player or a Portuguese club, I should say, they normally bump up the price a little bit. So I think another club would pay 30 million, we'd have to pay probably 40. So I'm going to go for 40. Wharton, possibly £60. It might be a little bit higher, but I'm just going for a ballpark figure there. I think we can definitely acquire him for that kind of money. Rodrigo, I'm thinking 70 million. Should do enough like for Diaz there in terms of the money. Isak, I think 120 million should get that deal done. Because I don't see anyone else paying higher than that. And if Isak shows the willingness or shows a strong emphasis towards Newcastle that he really wants to join Liverpool, then they'll make that deal happen. He doesn't need to officially hand in a transfer request, but if he, communicates and lets them know that, look, I gave you guys an extra year last year, I maybe could have moved on, and I'd really like to join Liverpool right now. So he'll have to push that move for that to happen. Otherwise, I don't think Newcastle are interested in selling him. But we can hope and dream for now. And in terms of the calculation for all of those four players would um, total to 290 million. Now, let's try and refresh our mind in terms of the outgoings. We generated around 310 million. So 310.5 minus 290, if we're doing outgoings minus incomings, it's 20.5 million pounds profit. And that extra 20 can be used leeway for the other deals. If it's not quite 30 million for, oh, why have I got Hatter written down? Got an error there. Should have been Deal Monday there. It could be 65 for Water. You can always use that as a leverage there. And you can also use that 20.5 million pounds to facilitate salary or bonus fees or whatnot. So we're not going to go through the complete metrics of how to do it. We're just doing it from the front end. And, you know, if we're able to generate over 300 million and those funds can be used on players in the squad, minus Saturday. That's the error there. I think I was trying to weigh the pros and cons on which centre back to go for. I haven't updated that slide, but to get those four players in the squad, it completes the whole squad in my opinion, and we won't need to sign more players in the next 2 3 windows. That's how complete our squad will be. So that's my viewpoint there. That probably being a bit of a dreamer here, but look, it's transfer season. We might as well have a bit of fun. And if I could, put that energy out there and get one of these players here, I'll be more than happy about that. But it's not completely unrealistic as well. It just depends if these players, are available to sign for Liverpool. So next season, this would be the complete squad if I made those additions. So in terms of the non-homegrown section, you've got 16 players there. So Isak and Rodrigo added, and then Wharton goes into the homegrown section there, and then you've got a few under 21. So 16 plus 6 is 22. So because we don't have enough homegrown, you have to minus 2 players from the 25 players that you can possibly register. So in this case, we've registered 22. We can register one more if we were to sign an extra player. I haven't presented him, but if we were to able to get one more player, I'm being a bit more selfish here, but hey, we might as well talk about it. I would like us to sign a player that would be an understudy for Mohamed Salah. And the player that I really like is Monaco's Akiluche. If you haven't seen him play, check him out on YouTube. I have a sneak feeling, and I don't want to put that energy out there. I have a sneak feeling PSG are going to sign him this summer. He's that level of a player. So Barcola, if that was to happen, that means Barcola could be available because they've got about 5 top strikers or attackers in their team. So having Akalucci as your sixth choice, they have to probably part with someone, and it would most likely be Barcola. So in one side, I'd be disappointed that he's gone there, but then it also opens another door for us to possibly get Barcola. So let's see. It's gonna be one of those summers where I feel like it could have a domino effect for certain positions across Europe, but only time will tell. Just gonna go through some of the comments, and then what I'll do before we close the show, I will present all of these players in the lineup, but I'll also present them in 2 or 3 different formations that I think we will be playing next season. Um, Kieran's comment is, isn't it mad how Barcola isn't even a guaranteed starter for PSG? It is mad because his stats this season have been out of this world. Honestly, like he was in double figures for goals and assists. I'm gonna get the exact number now to prove the point because whenever I've seen him play, he looks phenomenal. Even in the final, he had that mazy run and just needed to, add less power to that shot. It would have been a fantastic goal. Probably one of the best goals in Champions League final history. That's how elite that move was. This season, he's played 58 times, 21 goals, 19 assists. That's 40 GA in 58 games. Phenomenal, honestly. Can play left wing. That's his predominant position. Can play right wing. And can even play up top as well. So he would be the dream signing for left wing, if I'm being brutally honest. That's the player that I really, really like. I know I've got Rodrigo here, but I think that's because I think he wants a transfer out of Real Madrid, but he's my favorite choice. I think Barcola would be a fantastic signing for us. Um, Kieran says these possible incoming and outgoings remind me of FIFA. They do, I'm not gonna lie. If we could do that, you have shown us we would win the quadruple. Unfortunately, football doesn't work like that. Yeah, I'm going on the basis that we haven't spent a lot of money over the last 2 3 windows, so maybe we've got money there. Even the vert still, everyone's saying that that's the Jude Bellingham budget there, so that's why it hasn't been touched. But I don't know in terms of how realistic it is. Maybe the vert still has just got me so excited. I'm thinking maybe we can do 1 or 2 more deals like that as well. So who knows? But what I would say is that I would like, if it aren't the players that I've mentioned today, it's definitely still the areas of the squad that needs strengthening, in my opinion. I think we do need a centre back. If Consa leaves, he needs to be replaced right away. And I would say someone that's a little bit more experienced than Consa. So whoever is that third choice centre back would be, a player that can come into the team and really hit the ground running. Another player that I didn't mention earlier on, as an alternative to Diomande, he's not my cup of tea. I don't think he's everyone's cup of tea, but that is Mark Gay. And the reason I've said Mark Gay is because he's available for about £30 million due to having 1 year remaining his contract. So he could be a player on the move, and he fits that homegrown quota as well. So for me, um, it could be a player that Liverpool might look towards. Um, at that price, it's not a bad deal, and wouldn't mind him at third choice. But I just don't see him, being a player that is going to improve vastly. I don't think he'll come to an elite level at any stage of his career. And I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say that, but he would be a smart signing. But I would like us to maybe get someone better, someone that could replace Van Dijk, whenever he departs, and can form a partnership with Konate if he stays as well. So a little bit of uncertainty there. And the midfield, if it's not Wharton, maybe we go for like an Angelo Stiller, who I think would be available for that 40 million pound mark as well. A bit more attainable. But I've gone for Wharton for homegrown reasons, and also I feel like he's pretty much ready made to play for Liverpool because of his time in the Premier League. The left wing one, it can be a number of players. To be fair, I did a player profile of Malik Fofana yesterday, so he's a young up and coming star. Maybe he would be considered as a possible signing if Diaz was to leave because he wouldn't cost too much, and he'll be one for the future and one that will provide cover for Cody Gakpo, who would predominantly be the first choice left winger in the team. And the striker, yeah, I don't know what we're gonna do in that area. Because for me, we need to sign an elite striker. That's the player that completes the puzzle for us. Isak, Alvarez, those are the two, but they'll cost an arm and a leg. And then in terms of the potential, not FFP, but that sort of thing that trying to sign these players, might not be realistic. Uh, you know, Isak might not be a realistic signing either. But I'm just doing it in terms of being hopeful and being a bit of a dreamer that hopefully, if we were able to, you know, get these players based on player sales, then it is financially possible. Whether it happens or not, yeah, remains to be seen. But right now, all we can do is kind of hope and see what happens. The vert still shows that nothing's impossible. So that's what's probably given me that excitement to present all these players here. So what we'll do, we'll present the players in the lineups, and then you guys can let me know what you think of the setup. Um, so let's start with the the formation we play, which is 4-2-3-1. Um, the back line will remain as it is. Kirkes, Virgil, Konate, and Frimpong. In terms of their backups, um, it will be Robertson, Joe Gomez, Diomande is your centre back pairing, and Bradley. So I think that is adequate cover for those positions in the back line. In a double pivot, you've got Groundbird, McAllister. They formed a formidable partnership, so I expect that to continue. And then you've got Wharton, left-footed on that left side, and Jones playing alongside him. So that could be a solid midfield cover as well. I don't have a direct, like for like cover for Salah. It's well, currently, as in last season, I should say now, it was Javier or Chiesa, but because both players have left, there is no one on paper that fills that void. But in a situation if Salah is not playing or not available, you can pretty much move Rodrigo to that right hand side. You can play Jota there if you have to. You can play Szoboszlai there. So there are options to cover that. Even Frimpong can play right wing if we really, really needed to. So even though we don't have a like for like backup for Salah, there are other players that can play right wing. But I thought I'd leave it blank because I didn't want to repeat too many players as backup. I feel like I just confuse the visual a bit further. And then you've got Szoboszlai covering Verts. Then you've got Rodrigo as your starter with Gakpo as a backup, and then Isak leading the line with Jota as his backup. So for me, that is a very, very strong team there in that 4-2-3-1 formation. And the beauty about all of these players, they can all play in different roles. It's not always going to be one formation, one tactical approach. I think we're gonna have different setup, different formations for different games. So if we switch it up to a 4-3-3 with Gravenberch being a single pivot, you've got McAllister and Szoboszlai. So for me, Szoboszlai returns to the lineup in this formation because I feel like him playing as a number 8 would be uh, more beneficial, more impactful in this team. And then you've got Jones as his backup, you've got Wharton as McAllister's backup, and then you've got Endo as backup for Groundberg. So for me, Endo, Jones, Wharton, good quality to cover these three there. And then up top, you've got Verts starting from the left hand side. So I know it appears that he's a left winger here, but he's not going to play in that typical left wing role. He's going to drift infield quite a bit. But for me, he will attack from that left hand side, Salah from the right hand side, with Rodrigo on paper as his backup, and then Isak through the middle, and Diogo Jota as his backup there as well. And the formation that I envision the team playing next season is a 4-4-2 diamond. But the crazy thing about this formation is that there's no space for a Rodrigo because we've got Isak as the striker alongside Salah. So let's say this is the formation that Liverpool play next season. Rodrigo might not be a signing that we need. Um, of course, you'll say we still need Andy put cover um, for the strikers that we have in Isak and Salah, and that is correct. But I don't see, if this was the project that's presented to Rodrigo, I don't think that would make him want to leave Real Madrid for Liverpool because he's not a starter. So, but for argument's sake, let's just say this is the possible formation. Um, and what I like about it is that you've got Wharton covering for McAllister, but Wharton can cover for Gravenberch as well. So if we need a bit of a deep playmaker, he can play that role. That's why I liked the signing of Wharton ahead of Ashura. I think Wharton has better ball playing ability and can play as a six, or can play as a number 8. So that's one of the reasons why I really wanted us to, or I want us to sign um, this season, which I said this summer. And then you've got Jota as a backup for Verts because Jota can play that number 10 role. And then you've got Salah, Isak as your lethal front two with Rodrigo and Gakpo as your backup. And Rodrigo and Gakpo on paper is actually a good strike force as well. So this is my predicted lineups. And look, we'll get a better indication once we start preseason. But in any of those formations that are presented, um, I think this is a quality team. It'll just remain to be seen in terms of do we sign a like for like replacement for Diaz if he leaves? Because what could happen is that we use that money raised from his sale and combine it to get Isak, but we don't actually sign a left winger. That's a strong possibility as well. So something to consider. But of course, I think we'll get the clear picture once we make that signing of a striker. I think that would definitely dictate how Liverpool are going to play next season. Kieran says that front four is scary. Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is. Kieran says, I prefer the first formation, keeping that strong base in midfield with McAllister and Graham, but also has Verts as a number 10, and we can get Rodrigo in his favorite position. Yeah, I think the first one, let me put it on screen, is definitely the one that has the better balance for the players that I've mentioned in terms of new signings. It does make sense because you've got everyone playing their natural roles, and then the quality, behind them, is real quality. And because we would have to register, a lesser squad number because of us not fulfilling the minimum of 8 homegrown players, every player has to be top quality. And I feel like this squad, there is a lot of quality uh, within those 22, 23 players there. So for me, this one has a great balance. I like the other formation as well. So that's why it's very exciting and encouraging to see who we sign this summer because I feel like we can play these different formations throughout the season, and everyone will be so impactful because everyone's so flexible in terms of playing different roles, and they have a different sort of way of playing from a tactical point of view. They can play in slightly different roles, but still be as effective in their favorite role as well. So for me, this is exciting stuff for us to really look forward to next season. So even this 4-3-3 formation for me, this is one that has a good balance, especially with Szoboszlai and McAllister, and then Isak. And if Isak's not available for some reason, you can always have Verts as a false nine, and that adds a different dimension. Playing him like that. So it's very very exciting times. Um, but no, that will only happen if my vision is a reality. But I'm hoping the profile players that I mentioned in terms of centre back, centre mid, left winger, and a striker is fulfilled. In terms of who they are, we can have a debate. Once we get a bit more concrete news. But I do feel like those are the areas we really need to strengthen in order to have a complete squad. So yeah, very very exciting. In terms of what Liverpool are doing so far this summer. We've got 4 players through the door if you include Pexi, the goalkeeper. And yeah, hopefully another 4 more. I'm probably saying another 5 more, but I'm being greedy here. But another 4 more would be the dream there. Kieran says, yeah, I agree. We will be very flexible. And then he says we can all dream. Hey, yeah, we certainly can. That's why we do sort of content to spark debates and everyone gets involved. And yeah, if it happens, then I'm smiling because I kind of forecasted it to an extent. But let's see. As long as we address those positions, I'll be pleased. And whoever those players are will definitely do a dedicated show on those players and yeah, speak about it in more detail. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to let's go through the comments here. Actually, let me do this fast. So let's go through the comments. So shout out to Kieran, shout out to Daz, shout out to Mazzy, shout out to Abdul, shout out to Azrak, shout out to Musa, shout out to Ratchet Painting, shout out to Clone 66, big up yourself. Um, big up to Double D as always. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And just got one more comment here from Kieran. He says, this is the sort of thing that goes on in my head in everyday life. I'm not gonna lie, it goes through my head every day as well. That's why I thought, I have to present it in a show because it's one of my favorite shows, that I really enjoyed doing because, you can be a bit more like creative and then you can kind of try and make it realistic involving, transfer fees and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, this is the kind of content I like to do. And with it being off season, we'll do a lot more transfer related shows. Should be fun this summer. And Kieran says, great stream, mate. Have a good rest of your night. Big up yourself, Kieran. Thank you for tuning in and hope you have a good night as well. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. In terms of upcoming shows, I do have another show scheduled for tomorrow. It will be a transfer talk show. So I'll be collating all the recent Liverpool rumors that have circulated the web this week, and we can discuss it together. Whether there's any truth to it or not, we can kind of see if those players are good fit for Liverpool. We can rubbish a lot of the rumors as well, but it'll be an interesting show nonetheless. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.